Bambucorn is an equity crowdfunding platform for issuance of tokenized securities. So if you imagine issuers in a platform on the one side who are trying to raise capital by issuing securities tokens, Bambucorn enables the issuance of tokens by the issuers. On the other hand, Bambucorn also has investors who would be registered on the platform, and investors will be able to view each of those issuances and make up their own mind whether they want to invest in those securities tokens or not. So that's what, in a nutshell, is Bambucorn about. Now, with reference to what problems are we solving, I want all of us to think about three specific groups that are involved. Number one is the investors, number two is the issuers, and number three is what we call as experts. On the investor side, being angel investors ourselves, we figured that sometimes investors tend to struggle to evaluate investment opportunities. Not all early stage investors are necessarily equipped to understand the intricacies of angel investing and early stage investing. What Bambucorn does is solve that problem by creating a lot of educational material for angel investors to understand what challenges early stage investments go through, and to enable them take the requisite risks by understanding them much better. So that's one of the problems that we're solving. Number two is we figure that early stage investors tend to hold on, or they have to hold on to their investments for a very long period of time. On average, it tends to be about 5 to 7 years. So by enabling issuers issuing securities tokens, what we intend doing is to provide or facilitate investors with the necessary infrastructure to enable them sell those tokens and liquidate their investments much earlier than they otherwise would. So that's the second main problem of investors that we're solving. On the issuer side, again, being investors, we've seen founders struggle on the other side of the table to raise money, because founders are faced with a lot of responsibilities, whether it's operations or regulations or marketing, and the last thing they want is to spend 90 or 100% of their time in going out and raising money. So we want to create this platform to enable founders raise money seamlessly without necessarily having to spend a lot of time, because we do a lot of heavy lifting for them. The third dimension, which is the third specific group which I mentioned to you about earlier, is what we call as experts. We figured out that today there are plenty of professionals out there, whether they are professionals or businessmen or technology specialists. They have a lot of knowledge which they gladly would love to share with the entire ecosystem. What Bambucorn does is essentially encourages them to come into the platform, register themselves, and on a retainer basis come and provide their expertise to the investors when they carry out their due diligence on the issuers. I want to be a bit cautious here. Whilst securities tokens in general have the mandate to improve liquidity, but we want to be realistic here. What really drives whether the security tokens are liquid or not is the demand and supply function of the security tokens themselves, and it's really not just the platform. So whilst I'd like to believe that securities tokens take all of us one step closer to achieving liquidity, there's absolutely no guarantee. Having said that, what I'd like to share here is that over time, we do see plenty of security token transactions happening, and particularly over the last 3 or 4 months, the market cap and the trading volumes have grown, which have indicated that securities tokens do tend to improve liquidity. We as Bambucorn know that we want to create a good secondary platform as part of our phase 2 offering. So in phase 2, we would either develop our own secondary trading platform or partner with an existing secondary trading platform that we believe would enable the trading of securities tokens, thereby providing liquidity. So to answer the question, yes, securities tokens do get us one step closer to liquidity. So the securities tokens ecosystem comprises of players including custodians, infrastructure providers, issuance platforms, liquidity providers, and exchanges. Bambucorn is an issuance platform. The landscape of security token ecosystem is massive. It's actually growing. So if I take you back to May 2020, the market cap of the entire securities token ecosystem was close to $250 million. But over the last 2 to 3 months, it is more than doubled. So today as we speak, it's about 500 odd million dollars, so $500 million. And we also see the trading volumes increasing. Again, back in May, it was close to $2 million, whereas today, as I speak, we are at about $21 million. So that's a pretty exponential growth. So as Bambucorn, whilst we are an issuance platform, we have a partnership with a custodian, because for the securities token issuance platform to work, every other element needs to be in place. So with partnerships with custodians and a potential partnership with a secondary trading platform, we believe that this offering will be complete for investors to experience the entire life cycle of early stage investments. Back in 2018, we poured through tons of white papers because we were in a market when we lived through an ICO frenzy. Every single day you'd hear of one ICO or the other raising 10, 20, $30 million. Having read through all of those white papers in sufficient details and having gone into what token economics were, we figured, and we were lucky not to have invested in any of those ICOs, because we all know what happened to those ICOs in the last quarter of 2018, beginning 2019. But we want to be very, very clear that STOs are very, very different to ICOs. And it is such a vast topic that we're going to be probably having a separate podcast or a series in and of itself. But just to give you some highlights, an ICO is something which is not regulated. It is based on an offering of a coin that has the characteristics of a utility token. Whereas in the case of an STO, it exhibits characteristics of a security. And when I say security, it's either a share or a fixed income such as bonds. So by holding a token, you as investors would actually be holding something that represents the underlying share or security or bond. That means you will be having the rights to the underlying share, as good as owning a share or an ownership in the company. So an STO in that respect is very, very different. And also because of that reason, STOs tend to be pretty closely regulated all around the world. And when you're regulated, clearly you need to be maintaining a very robust set of compliance procedures in order to satisfy the regulators, which essentially protects the investors to a great extent. So to all of those critiques of ICOs, I'd actually say that look at STOs not like utility token, but as securities, where they're just providing you an infrastructure to be able to trade your tokens much earlier than you otherwise will be able to. So Bambucorn is sector agnostic. We don't mind looking at startups in fintech, health tech, marketplaces, AI, e-commerce, and what have you. But what is most important for us is, from a founder's perspective, we need to see a very personalized story as to why they actually incorporated that particular startup in that particular sector. Now that's really what gets us ticking, because it's really passion that drives us into whether we should be selecting a particular startup or not. But that said, passion is not the be-all and all. We also look for whether the technology solution that that particular startup is bringing to the table is making life for the end consumer much easier in terms of either making the product cheaper or more efficient or much more convenient. So these are some of the criteria that we look for in a startup. So any startup that fulfills the criteria that I just mentioned could qualify to be listed onto the platform. We've got a pretty robust assessment mechanism where we've got a good team of analysts who assess the underlying unit economics before taking on a particular startup for listing into the platform. Now, in terms of when the startup can come onto the platform, We are in a testing phase and in the process of obtaining a license. And very soon I expect to come up with an announcement of when we have obtained a license, and that's when really the startups can list themselves on the platform. Both accredited and retail investors can register into the platform. So we are not necessarily constrained by geography. We would encourage investors from all around the world to come and do the pre-registrations. We are yet to be licensed. That's why we do not have any active issuances live onto the platform. But by pre-registering, investors will be able to learn about the updates on the securities token offering ecosystem through a series of blogs, podcasts, articles, etc. And the platform is currently live for pre-registrations.